Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be exploring African agriculture and more specifically, the livestock sector.
Right.
We're going to be focusing on a company called Imfuyo.
Okay.
And our main source today is an article by Bernard and Jaffe, who's the leader over at Imfuyo.
That's good.
So get ready to learn about how this company is tackling challenges, empowering farmers, and really aiming to transform the agricultural landscape in Africa.
Yeah, you know what's so fascinating about this is that Africa's livestock sector is a $150 billion market already,
Wow.
with like 750 million livestock.
Wow, that's a lot of animals.
Yeah, but get this, the continent produces less than 10% of the world's milk.
That's crazy. I mean, considering how many animals they have there, it feels like there's a lot of untapped potential.
Yeah, and that's where Imfuyo comes in.
Okay.
They see each one of these animals as a $200 asset. So, I mean, think about how many animals we just said are there.
Yeah. How do they help farmers unlock that value, though? Like, just telling them their animals are worth more doesn't actually make them worth more.
Right. They connect farmers with buyers who are willing to pay a premium for like high-quality traceable livestock.
Okay.
So it's like they can get more value from their herds and actually make more money.
Oh, so it's about connecting them with a better market.
Exactly.
Okay.
African cows actually produce a lot less milk than cows in, say, the US or Europe.
Really?
Like significantly less. We're talking 500 to 1,000 liters annually in Africa,
Okay.
compared to 6,000 to 8,000 liters other places.
Wow, why is that? What's the difference?
I mean, there are a lot of reasons. It could be differences in breed, nutrition, animal health,
Right.
and also access to like modern farming practices and technology.
So there's a real need for some productivity improvements, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where Imfuyo is trying to come in. They want to shift livestock farming from like a subsistence way of life to a sustainable and profitable business.
I like that. How do they do that?
So they have a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
First off, they're a fintech company, which basically means they provide farmers with access to finance, data-driven insights, and livestock insurance.
Huh. That's really interesting. It's like they're taking things that people in developed countries take for granted
Yeah,
and bringing them to people who really need it.
absolutely.
These are like those basic resources that can really be transformative for these farmers.
Yeah.
So data-driven insights, what does that look like in practice?
So they gather and analyze a wide range of data. Things like weather patterns, soil conditions,
Okay.
market prices, and disease outbreaks.
Oh, wow.
And they can give farmers tailored advice on how to manage their herds and optimize their feeding strategies, how to prevent disease, and get the best prices.
This is like a personalized roadmap for success.
Exactly.
I like that a lot.
Imagine a farmer getting an alert on their phone that's like, hey, there's a high risk of disease outbreak in your area. Here's what you can do to protect your herd.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to climate change. I mean,
Yeah.
it obviously already having a huge impact on agriculture around the world. And Africa seems particularly vulnerable to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does Imfuyo help with that?
Data plays a big role in that too.
Okay.
So analyzing weather patterns, historical data, they can actually help farmers anticipate things like droughts, floods, and other climate challenges.
So they can be proactive instead of reactive.
Right.
That's really smart.
Yeah, this approach to climate resilience is key to making sure African agriculture is sustainable in the long run. And actually, studies have shown that this kind of data-driven approach can actually boost productivity by 20 to 30%.
Wow. Okay. So it's not just like a feel-good thing. It actually is impactful.
It's really impactful.
Yeah, that's right. We were talking about financial inclusion as well, and it's important to talk about this, I think, when we're talking about empowering farmers. Only about 30% of Africa's rural population has access to, like, formal financial services,
Yeah.
like banks or credit unions.
It's really wild.
So there's a lot of farmers who are just completely shut out of the financial system.
Yeah, and that's a problem that Imfuyo is trying to tackle
Okay.
with livestock-backed loans.
So when I hear livestock-backed loans, I imagine a farmer, like, walking their cow into a bank.
Yeah, not quite like that.
But I'm guessing it's a little more sophisticated.
Yeah.
How does it actually work?
So instead of like traditional collateral like land, farmers can use their livestock
Oh, interesting.
as security to secure loans.
Okay.
So it opens up opportunities for people who may not own land but have valuable herds.
Right.
The average loan size is around 50,000 Kenyan shillings.
Okay.
which can be a huge amount for a farmer.
Yeah, I can see how that would be. So it's like their livestock almost becomes a financial asset in a way
Right.
that they can leverage.
Yeah, and Imfuyo wants to support 100,000 farmers with these loans in the next 2 years.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So we can't talk about all of this without talking about livestock insurance,
Right.
because livestock represents such a huge amount of income for a rural household.
Yeah,
It can be as much as 25% of their income.
for sure.
So if an animal dies or gets stolen, or there's some kind of natural disaster that wipes out a herd,
Yeah,
it can be devastating for a family.
absolutely.
So what does this insurance program look like?
So they offer coverage for a whole range of different risks,
Yeah.
disease, climate impacts, even market fluctuations.
Okay.
So it's like a buffer against the unexpected.
Yeah, and it can help those farmers bounce back from any kind of setbacks,
Right.
protect their livelihoods.
Exactly. And you know what? Data shows that insured farmers have a much higher chance of recovering after some kind of event.
Really.
Yeah, like 30% higher chance of bouncing back than uninsured farmers.
It's amazing to me how Imfuyo is bringing all of these different elements together: data, finance, insurance,
Yeah.
and it's creating a more resilient agricultural system.
Hmm.
But their impact goes way beyond just individual farms.
Yeah, we're talking about things like food security for whole communities and economic development on a larger scale.
So maybe in the next part of our deep dive, we can get into some of those larger implications a little bit more.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But first, I want to make sure that we just recap what we've talked about so far.
Okay, yeah.
So we started by kind of exploring that untapped potential of African agriculture,
Right.
specifically the livestock sector,
Yeah.
and how Imfuyo sees each animal as a valuable asset.
Right.
And then we looked at how they're trying to boost milk production and empower farmers through data, through advice, through access to those resources like finance and insurance.
Yeah.
And we also talked about how they're trying to combat the challenges of climate change and build more resilient farming practices.
It's pretty amazing what they're doing.
It really is.
Okay.
So stay tuned and we'll explore the broader impact of Imfuyo's work. And we can think about how this model could be adapted to other regions and other sectors that are facing similar challenges.
Sounds good.
It's so cool how they're really recognizing that livestock are so important to these communities in Africa.
Yeah, there's such a vital resource already, and Imfuyo is trying to help people realize the full potential.
And that potential goes way beyond just those individual farmers. We're talking about food security for entire communities,
Right.
economic development on a much larger scale.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about how this Imfuyo model could be applied to other sectors and regions as well.
Yeah.
Where do you think this kind of approach would make a difference?
Well, one area is smallholder farming,
Okay,
and not just livestock, but crops as well.
makes sense.
Yeah.
There's so many smallholder farmers all over the world who face so many of the same challenges.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Lack of access to credit, insurance, even just reliable information about like best practices.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're saying we could take what Imfuyo's doing and apply it to, say, smallholder rice farmers in Southeast Asia.
Yep.
Could they use their land or their crops as collateral for a loan? Could they get access to data to improve their yields? Could they get insured against like floods or pests?
Absolutely. That's a really good idea. Think about the impact if we could bring that same level of support to these smallholder farmers everywhere.
Yeah, could be huge. And it's not just about developing countries either. What about supporting marginalized communities here in wealthy nations?
Right.
I mean, there are systemic issues often that prevent certain communities from being able to succeed in agriculture.
Yeah, absolutely.
So could we leverage existing assets like land, equipment, even traditional knowledge within these communities
Yeah, good point.
to help create a more inclusive system?
It's about looking at the resources we have in a new way and figuring out how we can use those to empower people.
It's a really inspiring idea. But of course, with any new approach, there are going to be risks and challenges.
For sure.
So what are some things that we need to be cautious about as we try to expand this model?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is making sure that these programs don't end up exploiting farmers.
Right.
We don't want to see people get burdened with debt or lose control of their land
Right.
because of a program that was supposed to be helpful.
So transparency and fairness,
Yeah.
making sure that these programs are really looking out for the well-being of the farmers.
Absolutely.
That's paramount.
And then there's the data piece of it, too.
Right.
You know, data-driven agriculture has a lot of potential,
Yeah.
But we have to be careful about things like privacy and security.
Right.
Farmers need to understand how that data is being used, and they need to be able to control it.
So it's about finding that balance between innovation
Mm-hmm.
and responsibility.
Exactly.
We want progress,
Right.
but we don't want it to come at the expense of people's rights
You got it.
or their well-being.
It takes careful planning, open communication with everyone involved,
Right.
and a willingness to learn and adapt.
So we can't just take the Imfuyo model and copy and paste it everywhere.
Right.
We have to understand the core principles behind it,
Yeah.
tailor it to the specific needs of each community
Absolutely.
and their specific challenges.
We want to empower people, not just replicate systems.
Right. And that makes me think about unintended consequences as well.
Oh, yeah.
What are some examples of that?
Well, you know what? If we focus too much on just boosting productivity,
Right.
we might actually incentivize practices that end up harming the environment.
Right.
So we need to make sure that we're thinking about sustainability as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's about making sure that these solutions are good for the planet and the people.
Right.
So we need to think about the long-term impact on things like soil health, water, biodiversity.
It's a good reminder that everything's connected.
For sure.
We can't solve one problem by creating another one.
Right.
So we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
We've gone from the specifics of Imfuyo's approach to the broader possibilities and potential risks of this model.
Right.
If we're talking about the future of African agriculture, what do you see as the main takeaways?
Well, I think Imfuyo shows us that things are changing.
Okay.
People are starting to realize that we need to invest in these smallholder farmers, and we need to use technology to help empower them.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're at this point where we have a chance to really bring together innovative solutions and make a real impact on society.
It's really exciting.
Yeah.
So if we can navigate those risks that we were talking about, we can create a future for African agriculture that's more sustainable, more equitable, and more prosperous.
Absolutely. And that's not just for Africa either. It's for agriculture globally.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Before we go on to our final thoughts for our listeners, I want to quickly recap what we've talked about in this part.
Sounds good.
So we started by talking about how we could apply Imfuyo's model to other places, other sectors, and how that could help those smallholder farmers all over the world. And then we talked about the potential risks, like being careful about how we use data, making sure that these solutions are sustainable.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that everything's interconnected
Right.
and that we need to find solutions that are good for people and for the planet.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned because we have some final thoughts for you.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to wrap up our deep dive on Imfuyo and the future of African agriculture here.
It's been a really interesting look at their whole approach
Yeah.
and how we could scale their model globally.
Yeah, we've covered a lot, but now it's time for some final thoughts, something to leave you thinking about even after you're done listening to this.
You know what I think is so interesting is how they focus on empowering farmers with data.
Yeah.
It's not just like giving them a bunch of information.
Right.
It's giving them tools to actually understand and use that data to make decisions about their business.
Right. It's like they're giving them the knowledge and then showing them how to use it
Exactly.
to shape their own futures.
That's the real power of this whole model. It puts the power in the farmer's hands.
Yeah, it's like recognizing that the people closest to these challenges are also the ones who are best equipped to find solutions.
Absolutely.
So as you go about your day, I want you to think about where do you see those opportunities to empower other people
Yeah.
with knowledge, with tools, and how can you help create a world where everyone has the resources they need?
Those are really good questions. And I really do believe that by asking questions like that, having these conversations and taking action, we can create a better future.
What a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
See you next time.